This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by promoter Eddie Hearn on the other side of the world out in Las Vegas. Eddie, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, mate. It's pure blue skies outside. It's not baking, but at 18, 19 degrees at the same time, you can't complain.
I'm glad to hear it. We just had a brief chat there, a bit of a baby face going on for yourself as well, Eddie.
Yeah, I know. I had a nice message from my aunt that said I look 30 again. So I don't know. Not convinced, but something a little bit different. And I'm starting a new training regime on Monday. So I'm just trying to see how I can be as light as possible on the scales. So yeah, I'm not sure it's here to stay, but little switch up.
Eddie, before we come on to this weekend and Conor's return, let's just go back to this past weekend. John Ryder falling short against Jaime Munguia. Just what are your initial reflections on the fight?
Yeah, I mean, look, I thought Munguia was brilliant. He was definitely better than I thought he'd be. John is tough as old boots and will never give up, but took a little bit too much punishment in the end. I thought the stoppage was perfect from Tony Sims. Um, it was the things that I thought John would be effective at that he couldn't be, i.e., using his strength and his size on the inside. Munguia matched him with that. The difficulty of the southpaw jab. Um, and really, John had a terrible start and ended up needed to win the fight by stoppage after just 5 rounds. So he sat on the ropes. He tried to look for that sort of catch and counter. He couldn't hurt Munguia, and yeah, I thought it was a really impressive performance from Jaime Munguia. Obviously, very proud of John, and he'll make a decision on what he's going to do probably this week. But could be the end of the road for him. I think he's had a great career, and really, the key for me with any fighter is to make sure they can leave the sport healthy, leave the sport financially secure, and he can do all of those things. So very proud of his performance, his career, and I thought it was a very good fight. It was a great atmosphere, but Munguia showed me that he's the real deal. Now, don't forget, he's 43-0 now, which is quite mad, and really hasn't had that many high-level world-class opponents. But that was a performance that shows me he is capable of mixing it, even with the likes of Canelo Alvarez and Benavidez and those guys. And I think he's going to be in a lot of fun fights.
Just one more on that and one more on John. Obviously, I think a lot of people would expect to maybe see the end of the road when it comes to his career now. But I was speaking to somebody yesterday and we kind of spoke about if there was one potential fight, don't know whether people thank me for saying it or not, would be arguably a potential of a Billy Joe Saunders rematch. Do you think that maybe that's the one which could entice
Yeah,
him?
maybe. But I think, you have to, I keep saying with all these situations, a bit like Callum Smith as well. The goal for these guys is to win world titles and to be in those huge, big name fights. So once you take a step back from that and know you've got to kind of rebuild to that position, it's a hard mountain to climb, or certainly one to visualize. It really comes down to the individual's desire. Do you still want to stay in the sport? Do you still love the sport? Are you still prepared to go to hell and back in training camp and in the ring? And when you're getting older and you've got money in the bank and you've been through those hard nights, I never blame anyone for saying that's my lot. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone's got that moment. Same, it's the same. It doesn't matter. It could be what you do, what I do. At some point in your career, you will go, I've had enough now. It's time. It's time. It's time for me to go and do something different with my life. Now, while the fire still burns for what you do or what I do, you never want to leave that life. And that's what makes you competitive. That's what makes you dangerous in your profession. Once the desire goes in anything, it's time to step back. And John needs to just ask himself those questions, and we'll support whatever he does.
Age moving away from him, moving forwards to this week, obviously Conor Benn, Peter Dobson. Strange time for you, obviously out in the States. 2:30, I believe the time's going to
Yeah.
be. They're in the ring. An easy or difficult decision. What was that like to come to?
In terms of the timing,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, obviously, Conor Benn can fight anywhere in the world, but not in Britain under the British Boxing Board of Control, which is quite bizarre, but we are where we are. So we wanted to take him internationally. And obviously, with America being the market that it is, we wanted to bring him to Las Vegas. It's every fighter's dream to headline in Las Vegas. But at the same time, we also realise, and DAZN realises, that he's a huge star in the UK. So do we want him to fight at 4:30 in the morning, UK? Not really. So we made the decision to go at 2:30 main event in the US. which is 10:30 p.m. in the UK, which is great news for UK fight fans. Bit of a difficult sell over here. They're not really used to it, but it's actually sold pretty well. And obviously, there's a lot of Brits coming over with Johnny Fisher and Jimmy Sains and George Liddard and Conor. But yeah, just really a chance for him to showcase over here. Dobson was on Fine Fettel yesterday. He's got a lot to say for himself. He's undefeated. He's a tough kid. But if Conor's talking about the people he's talking about and we're talking about putting him in with him, he's got to destroy Dobson on Saturday. And I think he'll do it. I've seen him in the gym. I've seen him sparring. This guy is ferocious, dangerous, and I want him to make a statement on Saturday, and no better place to do it than the Strip of Las Vegas.
Just one more on the timing front, Eddie. Are there any concerns that the numbers might not match up to your expectations, given that obviously Buatsi Aziz's headlining on Sky Sports at a similar time?
Not really, no. I mean, you never want to clash, and obviously we've put our marker down for the time, which will be about 10:30 ring walk. So I would think they'll probably go a little bit earlier with Buatsi, if they can go just before 10 o'clock, which, to be honest with you, Andy, I don't know if you noticed in Belfast, but we're making a conscious effort now to bring the start times forward. And I think it's something that gets very well responded to, particularly on social media and Twitter. People going, wow, the show's over by 10:15, 10:30, and how many times do you sit there, even myself in the arena or people at home, and it's coming up for 11 o'clock and the main event hasn't even started yet. So for us in the UK, we want to bring those 10 o'clock latest first bell for UK fights in an ideal world. So I don't know. Obviously, I don't know who's on the card, who's off the card in on the Buatsi thing, because obviously you've got the Dubois Ferreira situation. I don't know if that fight's still taking place, etc. But if they do go just before 10, we actually shouldn't clash. So that would be great for everybody.
It certainly would be great if we can stick to a 10 p.m. main event time. But coming back to Conor, obviously there's a lot of expectation on his shoulders. A lot of people expect him to somewhat walk through Peter Dobson. He's very that pressure that maybe you guys are putting on him as well to say, we need this performance now. If you're going to show this is where your career is heading, you are ready for those big names that we keep mentioning in the interviews.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Dobson is tough. He's undefeated. And this is, like I said, any fighter gets a chance to headline in Vegas. It's massive for him. And Dobson the same. But, if Conor's talking about Crawford in time, Ennis in time, all these unbelievable pound-for-pound fighters, you've got to destroy Peter Dobson. And I want him to take this guy out inside 6 rounds. And I believe he'll do it. As tough as Dobson is, I know he can take a lot of hammer and he'll give everything. You've got to be cruising through these levels if you're going to fight one of those real top 147 pounders.
Obviously, obviously you mentioned earlier you're out in the States now fighting there once again. What is the latest with the board and UKAD's appeal against the decision with regards to kind of that was supposed to come towards an end in January that we were speaking about last year. So as we approach the end of January now, well, this is the end of January. What can you tell us?
I believe there's an appeal date set for February. Don't know the exact timings of that, but great for us. We've been waiting for that since August, September. So, as I said, once that decision is made and we believe and everybody believes we win that appeal as we won the first case, hopefully that's the end of it. And we can just go back to making massive fights for him in the UK. There's so many big fights for him in the UK. Obviously, Chris Eubank Jr., Kell Brook, Liam Smith, loads of fights. And, I don't mind Conor fighting internationally. But let's be honest, British boxing at the moment is crying out for an arena and stadium seller. And Conor Benn's the guy that can deliver those fights. So hopefully it can come to an end in February and we can all just get on with our lives.
Eddie, moving away from Conor, a few other topics to touch on. I've seen Ryan Garcia now say that talks have reopened about a Devin Haney fight. What can you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Devin actually just before this call, just via message. We're due to meet up this week. Great that Ryan Garcia is back on that train, if you like. He wanted to fight Romero, which I kind of understood because I think it's a lot easier fight than Devin Haney. But I just feel that Haney-Garcia is the fight to make. It's the fight to make for DAZN. It's the fight to make for both guys as well. I'm sure Ryan's got his perception of what a deal looks like, and Devin's got his own. And I'm sure it'll be far apart initially, but I think when everyone sits down, if everyone's sensible, I'd like to think there's a deal to be made.
Would it not be easy just to pick up from where maybe things were prior to Ryan deciding he didn't want to face Devin?
Yeah, but there wasn't really a huge amount of negotiations that took place before that. there was personal interest from Ryan. You know, he reached out to me. I spoke to Golden Boy. But now I think, you know, sometimes in these situations, the fighters having a little chat with each other can go a long way. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you got two smart, sensible guys there. It's not like you got two, you know, guys that aren't willing to have a sensible conversation or just so stubborn they just got their number, and if it's not that, it's not happening, and then that's it. That's the last you hear of it. So if both guys genuinely want to make it happen, I think it has a great chance.
Eddie, moving forwards once again, spoke to Anthony Yarde yesterday. He mentioned Boazzi, Anthony Yarde, Chris Billam-Smith up at cruiserweight, but with Callum Smith now. Callum Smith's also said it's a fight which would interest him to keep him involved. The 5 versus 5, do you think that could be one which kind of somewhat is at the top of that card if it was to go ahead?
Yeah, it's a great fight. I mean, look, we've got two light heavyweights that would fight Anthony Yarde. We've got Craig Richards, who will now return on February the 10th, and we've got Callum Smith. I was not surprised to hear Callum's comments, but I was very happy to hear them, because I did have my doubts as to whether he would return to boxing. You know, we talked about that level, but I think as long as it's a fight that the fans want to see, and a fight that's at world level, I think he would entertain it. So certainly a Yarde Smith fight is a tremendous, you know, potential headliner for the 5v5. But, you know, I've already spoken to George, and I think he's going to speak to Anthony Yarde. I think he's fighting next weekend, isn't he, Yarde? So let him get that victory. And we would love to put one of our light heavyweights in against Anthony Yarde. I think he's a great fighter, very exciting and entertaining. And it would be a tough one for us to get the point against. But I would be up for Craig or Callum taking that challenge.
Taylor-Catterall 2, Eddie, what's the latest?
Nothing's really. I don't think I've spoken to yourself on it. Just, you know, a situation where obviously it's a very expensive fight. It's a great fight, and it's one that I think is the right fight. But it's a fight that, because of the money, needs to go really on pay-per-view. The Zone didn't feel that it was a pay-per-view fight, and you know, I spoke to Sam Jones and Jack Catterall and said, look, if someone is prepared to stage that fight, I have no problems with you accepting it. Go and get that fight, get the win, come back, and then we'll do a world championship fight. So I think Sam Jones is speaking to relevant broadcasters now about that fight. As I said, great fight. You know, just because DAZN wasn't prepared to put it on pay-per-view doesn't mean that it's not a brilliant fight and the right fight for everyone. I think it is. So if we can find a home for it in that capacity, we're definitely up for allowing that to happen.
Eddie, one thing I also want to get your thoughts on is these reports and rumours of Fury-Opetaia having dropped Tyson Fury in sparring, and hence why he was kind of taken away. He'd come out addressed from Jai and his team. But then I've seen Johnny Nelson also come out saying that he's starting to hear that Tyson's had a bit of a tough camp dealing with the southpaw sparring. What do you know, if anything at all, about Tyson sparring and how Jai fared with him?
But sparring stories are sparring stories. As I understand it, the story of Fury-Opetaia dropping Tyson Fury is absolute rubbish. You know, I've heard that from Jai's team. You know, I also know people, you know, obviously with his team, I know a lot of people that were there. And quite honestly, it's probably something I would hear about. I believe they did 4 or 5 rounds, and Jai had literally just returned to camp. I'm sure that Jai was his normal self, trying to take Tyson's head off, is what he does. But as I understand it, it's complete rubbish. I saw Johnny's interview. I think it was Talk Sport, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's probably not going to help them out. I think they're definitely banned for the foreseeable from that side. But no, as I understand it, complete rubbish. And you know, I don't know that many people from Tyson's camp. You know, obviously got a decent relationship now with Spencer Brown and those guys at Gold Star, who are top quality people. As I understand it, camp's going well. You know, he's got a lot of sparring partners in there. Yeah, I think the stuff that, you know, I was surprised to see that from Spencer and Johnny. Like, they almost said that it was sort of confirmed news. But all I can tell you from my side is I think it's a load of rubbish.
And just a final one from me, Eddie. Cordina and Cacace on Feb 17th. I was wondering an understanding of Joe's kind of contractual situation with Matchroom. Is he out of contract? Is he
No, still with us, and I've been with him all week. Yeah, it's a great opportunity for him. Obviously, it is a Matchroom v Queensberry fight, and one that could have landed on the 5v5. But maybe if Cacace can do a good job, maybe we run it back on the 5v5. But it's a big opportunity for Joe. He's been training really hard in LA and in Las Vegas. He's had a great week out here. I was with him at the UFC yesterday. We're training there again today, and ready to put on a great performance in Saudi Arabia. It's a massive opportunity that was presented from Spencer Brown, Gold Star, George, all those guys, and Joe is ready to perform. It's a tough fight against Cacace. He's tricky and he's going to be hungry, but I expect Joe to show his class in Saudi Arabia, and obviously looking forward to being out there. We've got 2 guys on the undercard, which is a blessing. And then I can just sit back as a fan and watch the Undisputed Heavyweight World Championship. So can't wait to be in Riyadh February 17th.
Frank, going to keep a ringside seat for you warm there?
I'm not sure I'll be as close this time, but I don't care as long as I get to see it. You know, those shows are incredible out there, and that is, you know, right now the biggest fight in boxing, Usyk against Fury. So I'm looking forward to seeing it live.
Eddie, I've slightly run over. I apologise, but thank you for speaking to me and enjoy the rest of the week.
Cheers, Andy. Take care, mate.